Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Happy Monday!
It's Monday.
I love Mondays. Do you know why I love Mondays?
Why? Because it's the podcast day?
No, because it's one day closer to Friday.
Oh my gosh.
The weekend is
hysterical.
nearly upon us in 5 days.
Mondays begin the countdown.
Mm-hmm.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Happy New Year! Yeah,
It's
that's
like
what
a
it's
happy
like.
new week every week.
It is really.
Yeah, happy
So-
new week, happy new weekend.
Hey, I got a little fun story that happened recently. I feel like I shared it on the podcast, but then
I
feel
keep
like
saying
I
you
didn't.
haven't. So if the audience can Instagram us and tell us who's right.
Yeah, totally.
I can't remember,
I would
but
lo-
I think I'm right.
Okay. Well, recently I had a moment where I was in Starbucks with a friend of mine and named Ryan and Ryan and a woman maybe in her 50s comes walking our direction. I only know that because she says Brian and I think she's talking to Ryan and you know sometimes people call me
People-
Jason.
Yeah, totally.
You know, it's always Jason. It's Justin or Jason. It's one of those two. My great grandma called me Jason. So I look over and she's staring at me. She's like, "Oh, you're not Brian, are you?" I'm like, "No, I'm Justin, Mary. How are you doing today?" And she's like, "How do I know you?"
Wait, I love that you just spit that back so fast. I'm Justin. How are you, Mary?
Yeah.
you just
Something like that. It was very quick. I was just like, but I saw a flash of the name Mary in my head. And so I just call her Mary because I think that's just funny, right? And she was like, "How do I know you?" I'm like, "You don't." She's like, "I must." "Why?" I was like, "Is your name Mary?" She's like, "Yes, my name is Mary." I had no idea. I just saw it flash in my head.
I love it because it's like just being like, well, how are you, Joanne or Karen or Shaniqua? Like, how are you? And then her being like, no, that's real.
Yeah. And so then there was this like kind of like face off or like a very awkward silenced moment. Both of us trying to figure out like,
Now what?
is there a moment here? Is there something
How
special
did he know
to
my
this?
name?
Is he going to hand me some sort of prize? Is this a surprise?
It's a hidden
camera
show.
Yeah, no, but that was it. But I think that sometimes life hands you these moments, these surprises like this. And then if you're listening and you follow it, it can lead into really fun things. But mostly I was like, internally, woman, you need to move along. I'm having a good conversation here because I have nothing for you. Because I was trying
But
to
you
figure
actually
out.
checked. You were like,
I did. I was
is there
like,
something I need
is
to
there a
tell this
special
woman?
moment? Is this more than a coincidence? Is this like a special thing? But I couldn't think
What
of
a funny
anything.
thing that you just shot her name out
Uh-huh.
as a joke back.
Yeah.
And it was her.
Look for the fun coincidences in
Ooh.
life. Ooh. So what we talking about today?
Okay, I'm so excited to talk about. We're talking about. This is such a funny. I'm like, ooh, I've got a lot of pep for what we're going to talk about.
This is going to be a real
A
depressing
real
one.
doozy. We're actually
Buckle
going
up.
to. We're going to talk about our journeys through sickness. Me and you. We've gotten so many questions from people who have chronic sickness or people who just. Here's the thing. It relates to so many areas. It's basically just anytime if you're in life and you have something that you're out of control of
Yeah.
that is causing you pain.
Sickness is a form of suffering, and there's many forms of suffering. And that's
Yes.
why when people like look at a form of suffering, they're like, okay, how are you getting through that? Because my suffering's not your suffering. It's different,
Yeah.
but it's still suffering.
Absolutely.
And so we kind of want to do a little bit of a deep dive into Abby's world of suffering in this last year. I've talked in the past about my suffering process. And
Yeah,
so people have a little bit more knowledge of what went on for me. But this last year, you know, as some of you have watched via social media, Abby's been a lot more vocal about sharing her current pain this year, which let me just add a little bit. So historically, I'll just say, people know that she's had chronic sickness at some level. If you followed us for any level of time, you know, okay, she's had chronic sickness.
Yeah.
But this last year has been massively amplified.
Yeah.
And that's led us to
everything got turned up real intense.
And we're going to kind of go into the journey of what that's looked like and even how I've had to process as a support system inside of that and how
Yep.
that's affected me. But that's kind of led us to a crossroads right now. And we've had some different measures as far as seeking out doctor's assistance. And we might talk a little bit about that inside of this podcast. But we've recently come across an opportunity to meet with a doctor out of Spain.
Yeah, so he is really well known. I have multiple people that I know that their entire lives have changed working with him, who had been sick for a long time. And so his name is Dr. Hilu. He has a clinic in Spain. And so you send your blood to him and he's able to test it and see everything that's happening. It's, I think, very, very accurate.
Yeah.
From what I've seen, he's like a genius at what he does. But so they have a clinic in Spain, and what we have decided to do is to go to Spain. We leave.
Yeah, we had a last minute opportunity because something opened up over there where we could actually get in. And so it began like kind of scrambling to get things in place for us to take off. And which has brought a hope. I mean, we've already been developing a lot of hope in this season. We're going to talk about that, but it also even brought more hope, like the timing of everything.
Well, and I wanted to say that like the journey we're going to talk about through suffering is very hopeful. I'm going to talk about all of the gifts and the learning and the freedom that I've gotten from this last year. So this is not actually a doozy. This is a very hope-filled conversation. But I think this would be fun just to share with the listeners. As I was going on the journey of picking a doctor, our friend had a dream. So they had a dream, and they told me about the dream on Tuesday night. And in the dream, they said that I had just packed up all of my bags and moved to Lebanon to get healing. And, but it happened so fast. And then they woke up and they're like, that was so specific and random, but I'm going to tell you. So they told me the dream, and I'm one of those people that I'm always like listening and looking for, how the divine is leading in whatever form. And so I was like, well, what do you think that dream means? Because I mean, I was like, that means nothing to me. He's like, well, I don't know. Like, I know you're on the journey figuring out what the next doctor is that you're going to work with. And maybe he'll be from Lebanon and that'll be confirmation to you. And I was like, okay, I'll just go Google search doctors for Lebanon that can help with my specific issues. And so I thought, okay, so that was Tuesday. Wednesday, I met with this woman. So I had, I've known about Dr. Hilu for over a year. The last time that I sent in my blood to him a year ago, but we were working with another doctor.
So, yeah.
And so we didn't switch programs because we were still working with that one. So I met with my friend who's wonderful, and we just started processing through all of the issues. Now, to be honest, I have a lot of issues around seeing doctors. And if you've had a chronic health issue, you can understand because you've learned you have to be your own advocate. Yep. Doctors tell you things that may or may not be true. They don't listen all the time.
They don't ask good questions. And that's a generalization.
Yeah, there's great doctors out there.
We have a lot of friends who have also had similar experiences where you have to fight to have a voice. Mm-hmm. The investigation is very minimal.
Yeah.
And they have their conclusions. And you're like, no, wait, you're not hearing me on this. And so it brings a lot of triggering stuff. So this is why this is key.
So I was processing with her, and she was a great person to process with because she just wants me to do what is best for me.
Right. She's not controlling.
Yeah. And that feels really empowering because I've been around a lot of people that are so opinionated that you can't. Anyway, so she was talking about going to Spain because she went there. She had cancer and was fully healed. And then she went back with someone else who had cancer who was healed. One of my friends who's had Lyme's disease forever went there and is like a completely different person. And so she's just talking about it. Because I knew that if I was going to do this journey, that'd be a part of it for me. Yeah. And so when she was talking about her trip to Spain, I just knew I could feel like, okay, no, I need to work with this doctor. I need to go to Spain.
Yeah.
I could feel that divine nudge. Now, I was asking all my practical questions because I think it's super important to be logical and know all the stuff. But I also could feel this pull on the inside. So we decided to do it.
Yeah, and you asked, and you said to her, you asked her, where's he from?
Yeah, at the end, I just said, where's Dr. Hilu from? And she said, oh, he's from Lebanon.
He's Lebanese. What?
And so it felt really crazy. It felt like this beautiful intertwining because in our friend's dream, like we were packing and just gone
really
so
fast and just gone. So it felt very like a lot of confirmation, like, all right, there's something on this bigger than us. Let's follow this. And I think that life will lead you by these little nuggets along the trail. And you just have to say yes and kind of risk and have some faith in it and just kind of see how it plays out. So, but really going to Spain though, it's
a trip where for 2 weeks I'll be getting treatments every day.
Yeah. Yep. And one of the things is that it's a really expensive trip and very incredibly expensive.
Wait, can I just rewind really quick about this? So the day before this all happens and we decide to do this, I'm having a counseling session and my counselor's like, what are you really afraid of? And I was like, my biggest fear is that sickness is going to devastate our finances. That's my biggest fear.
It came out of your childhood.
Yeah, and I didn't know that. Like it wasn't what I consciously thought. It was just like, oh, there it was. And then we realized it's because the way my parents told me our family story, our financial family story my whole life, they said we were fine until your mom got sick. That's why we had to go bankrupt. And then they could never get out. They couldn't get out of it. They were always under it. So in my mind, subconsciously, I wasn't aware. But as soon as I got sick, I've been having money fear.
Yeah. Anxiety coming up underlyingly.
That I've had to process through this year. So it was really cool because I was like, okay, I need to, like, I can let go of that and let go of that belief system. And so it was so beautiful that the day before we recognized that we're about to have to spend
before having a complete utter meltdown after you say yes to something like that.
Yes.
But so part of the project is you got inspired too about this journey to over the last couple of months. You've already been stirring with this message of compassion inside of you and the power of compassion, people getting transformed and healing through compassion.
Yeah.
Right.
Because this is what we do. And I want everybody to have access to the things that have transformed us the most. And I've built my entire business off of two things: learning how to be powerful and learning self-compassion, compassion, and love, and how to connect to it and agree with it. And most people don't have resources. In counseling, it can take me a year or two sometimes to get people all the way. And I'm like, oh, because we don't have any resources. I haven't found great books on it.
Very few resources that seem to be. Some. Yeah, but seem to be in mainstream media about compassion. And
so I've been like burning to like get compassion into everyone's hands so they can just do the work themselves, agree with love themselves, hear it. And so as soon as we found out we were going to Spain, I just felt this, like, I was like, okay, this is so much money, but I'm going to invest in my body and I'm not going to be afraid. And then it was like the idea just came.
Like now would be a great time to actually release that message. And
as like a fundraiser.
Yeah. A way to pay for you is to create this, get that message out there and pay for it. And so it's called the Compassion Project. And we're in the middle of the final stages of getting things up and developed on the back end. And so
the subtitle is Healing Your World Through the Practice of Compassion. And it's your world because it's like the people around you, but it's also your heart and your insides. It's everything. It's healing your world.
Or it could be healing through the practice of compassion. I don't know.
Oh, are we not settled on that?
I'm not quite settled on it.
Okay, great.
But with that said, you guys can go to stumvalconsulting.com/courses/the Compassion Project, all one word. And you'll be able to go there. What we're going to have available is all the teachings for download. You'll be able to buy it and download it directly to your computer and have access to all of that. There's going to be multiple parts to the whole teaching process. And so you'll be able to check that out if you want to get in and get transformation with regards to compassion and healing inside of your world. Or if you're like, oh yeah, I would love to support you on that journey and this is a good exchange for that, then that's a good way to do it as well. And if you don't, if it's like, I don't want that teaching, but I'm going to buy it for someone else that I think it would radically help them and give them access to the course, then you can go ahead and do that. So. Yeah,
I think it's just a way to let people partner with us. It's kind of cool because compassion is the healing journey. And so I'm inviting people to go on their healing journeys, but also while they go on their healing journeys, it's going to help me go on my healing journey.
Absolutely.
And we all get to heal together.
Healing for everyone. Yay. And you get healing and you get healing. Go, Oprah. It's your birthday. Okay. So here's what I want to talk about, because that segues great into even further going deeper into this conversation.
Yes.
Because part of your process to your body pain has also been the process of the compassionate healing journey for your own soul in this last year.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about how big the pain is, like what the year as far as the sickness has been for you. We'll get into that. And then we're going to kind of get into the emotional components that were going on in trauma counseling and everything else that coincided with this.
Yeah. So at the end of 2018, I've had chronic health issues for a long time, but at the end of 2018, they found a diagnosis. They found an answer they thought would be a great solution. I felt pretty excited. 2019, I did that treatment, and it just sent my body just freaked out. It just freaked out. Just like everything went wrong. So from 2019, from the January that to now, I've had an infection the entire time.
A chronic infection of different levels.
Different kinds of infections. It's not even the same. There's a few that I've had over and over again, but like just constant infections. And then there are so many symptoms, and I don't want to go into all the symptoms, but I have been in excruciating pain.
Yeah.
For most of it. Like I would say like a 7 to 9 on a regular basis. And then if you've ever been sick, that probably the other two things besides the pain has been brain fog, not being able to think, not being able to put sentences together, not being able to know what's going on, not being able to remember like what you just said, or where I can't remember where I'm going in my own sentences.
Yeah. And that for me was one of the most terrorizing and traumatic parts of my experience, because you can take my body out and leave me strapped to a couch. As long as I have my mind,
I could talk to people or
but
whatever.
The minute you eliminate the mind, you feel so powerless and out of control, and that shuts everything down. Like your body can if your body functions fine, but you don't have your mind, you still can't use your body. It's pointless.
Right.
And so that's really devastating, and it feels scary.
Oh yeah. And I had struggled with vertigo and spinning in my head. There's just so many things. It was very swishy. And then also exhaustion, extreme fatigue, which makes sense because my body was fighting all the time,
all kinds
trying
of things,
to do it. And so I had to quit everything this last year.
And you were strapped to the couch for months on end, basically, with a machine that was kind of like trying to help eliminate one of your problems.
Oh, yeah. For months, I was on a machine. I had to be on 7 hours a day on the couch.
Yeah.
So I was tethered to it. We stopped all traveling. I stopped all speaking. I really just knew that I had to go on the healing process, and knew that, here's the truth, when it happened, so that started in January. I got sick. Around March, I started having PTSD symptoms.
Yeah.
And so I started seeing a counselor who works with PTSD, and it has been the best journey. And this is why I'm actually excited to share today, because I'm not sharing a story of how chronic sickness has been devastating for me and so hard. I'm sharing a story of how, like, this year it has been how I've seen the gifts that have come from it.
Right. You've been able to extract so many gifts out of the process of it. And rather than going, oh no, my life's been taken from me. Oh no, I'm going to take my life back.
Yeah.
More than just from the sickness, I'm going to take it back further in other areas.
So I remember one of my sessions with my counselor, she gave an analogy, and this is the only way I could have heard it. It was perfect for me. And she said, I'm going to tell you two different stories. And one was, she works with people with DID, dissociated identity disorder, or multiple personalities. And she was like, one of the personalities can have diabetes, and the other
symptoms of it completely.
And the symptoms of it, and the other personality doesn't.
They're
can eat sugar and they're
physically fine. Yeah.
She said, one of my people that I worked with had poison oak for one personality.
Yep. That would flare up suddenly when that personality came out.
Yep. And then when it switched personalities, the poison oak would be gone.
Isn't that mind blowing?
It's crazy. It's so crazy.
I want a personality that thinks it's a superhero so I can fly.
So that your body will just do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't need you to have that personality unless you can actually fly, and then let's do it.
Awesome.
So, so she's like, on one hand, sickness comes from your mind. And I have heard, like, I think Carolyn Leaf says like 90% of sickness comes from your mind. I was like, how do you prove that? I don't know. How do you even test that? I don't know. But so I love my counselor. She didn't give me a percentage. She was just like, we know that is true. So that is one side. Then she said, on the other side, she said, one time I called 911 because I was cramping so bad on my period. And she said, all of my friends made so much fun of me for doing that.
Right.
And
you're on your period, 911. Okay.
Totally. Oh, you had to call because you had cramps. You have no pain tolerance. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And so then when she got pregnant and she had her first kid and she went through child labor, she was like, oh my gosh, this is what my cramps are like every month. Like, child labor was not extra. It was like, I go through this. And when she went through that, she was like, it's very valid, the pain that I've been in.
Right.
And so she's like, you can't go either side. Like, if you say like it's all in your mind and nothing is valid, then that's going to destroy you.
Yeah.
But, and so you have to say like, no, the pain I have is valid and real.
If it's only your physical pain, then at the end of the day, there may be solutions that are from a mental and emotional place that could bring healing that you're avoiding.
Yeah. And so I think that was this great inspiration for me to be like, yes, she's not saying all of my sickness is my fault, because that's what no one wants to hear. But she is inviting me to dig in and find my path. And the beautiful thing is she's very much about, it was helpful for me to have faith because she's worked with people before and she's seen them get well. And sometimes I think you just need to know that it's possible.
Yeah, you just hear the story and go, okay, someone else did it. I'm going to too. Let's go.
And so she was like, my job is to help you figure out your internal intuition system, because in there will lead you out.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't have the keys to lead you out, but what's inside of you can lead you out.
Yeah, which is crazy because as you started the process of going inside, it was really leading you out of your childhood. It feels like even you being sick and the emotions that you felt around sickness, it feels like you've entirely entered into your childhood.
Oh, yes. Here's the thing about being sick. So when you are in so much pain and agony and fear, in normal life, when your body's working and your life is not hard on all in any area, you have the capacity to shove things to the side.
Yeah.
When it's like hard, you're like, oh, that's okay. I'm going to push this over here and I'm going to keep going. I'm going to ignore this over here. And we call that in America, like, oh, you're being strong because you can compartmentalize so many things. And so I find that our lives are always trying to get out of pain. Mm-hmm. Our lives want us to get free. And what will happen is if we won't listen to the pain at a small level, it will scream until there's no way to ignore it.
It'll get your attention one way or another.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that my life caused me to get sick to do it, but I am saying that because I couldn't shove it to the side, it allowed me to jump into the deep end. And so I would have all this, like, you've got to think, my body is freaking out. It's doing things. I don't know when it's going to get better. I don't know how bad it's going to get. And all of a sudden, all of these fears are coming up. Hopelessness is coming up. I'm feeling like such like, what is the point? I had to quit everything. So I'm like, what is the point to my life? Like, basically all I do is live on the couch. I can't eat hardly anything because I have a problem with candida. And so the diet is, my friends, like, it's stricter than any diet that there is out there.
Yep.
It is so strict. And it's one of those diets you can't cheat once. If you cheat once, you have ruined all of the momentum. It's like an intense thing. So I can't eat things and I can't do things. At one point I couldn't walk more than 10 feet.
Yep.
So there's no way for me.
There's no way to get the comfort that's needed. Mm-hmm. So you're backed into a corner and you're like, I can't get comfort from food. Just simply just having something that I like. That's all been stripped out. There's no comfort there. There's no comfort in getting out of the house and going like, well, I'm going to go distract myself and go shopping or hiking or do something I love because I'm just on this couch. And so comfort is really having to figure out how to give yourself comfort and let people comfort you in that where you're at.
Yeah. And so all of a sudden I'm feeling all this pain and I'm having to honestly look at it. And one of the biggest keys that changed the game for me, and it hit me. I read Complex PTSD with you to understand you, and it talked about emotional flashbacks. And then it was like one day it just connected to me that everything I feel about sickness is actually an emotional flashback from my childhood.
Yep. You're a little girl again, experiencing all the places you felt out of control. You felt abandoned and alone.
Yeah. I have to figure this out. I have to be self-sufficient. Nobody will help me. My needs aren't going to get met. All of those things. Yeah.
And so this is actually almost like put you on a radical journey of renewing your mind.
Oh, so every time I would get like, let's say all of my symptoms are really, really bad. And I finally think I'm overcoming this infection. And then I get another infection and a migraine and I'm throwing up and all of these things are happening. And then I start to feel like this deep hopelessness. Like, I can't do this. I'm never going to get out. Like panic,
complete panic I'd feel from you.
Yeah. And so then what I would be like is like, okay, this is the little girl. She felt out of control as a kid. She felt like she couldn't do it. She felt like there was no answers. She felt like she wasn't going to be okay. Yeah. And I began to see this theme through sickness, that sickness brought up a few common sentences, a few common ideas. And one of them is, I'm not going to be okay.
Yeah, that was a big one.
And so anytime something new would happen, I would go right to, I'm not going to be okay.
I remember one night, you were scream crying in my arms. I mean, like, I'm going to kind of open up just a little bit about
please
this
do.
On that as a side note. There's been many a nights where I've laid there with you in my arms and you've just been scream crying in agony. And that agony has come in different forms. That agony has been body agony, and that agony has been emotional agony. And a lot of those nights I would sit just quietly and hold you and let tears just kind of stream down my face because, when one of the great, I think, outside of personal suffering, one of the greatest sufferings is when someone that you deeply love is suffering. There's nothing more painful than staying connected to someone in a deep, loving way through the process of their suffering. Yeah. And I can't park myself. I'm going to get into talking about how I can't stay in your suffering. And I have to be okay at some level, like allow you to have your suffering process. But there's parts of that I'm, deeply close to. And so I know that a lot of times that would be something like you would be scream crying, it's not going to be okay. It's not going to be okay. And I had to I couldn't just sit there and correct you and be like, no, it is. I can see something on the other side of this. I had to be there and be present with that because I realized as it was coming out, I'm like, this is the little girl inside who's convinced that she's never going to be okay. She's never going to be taken care of. When she has her greatest need, there's no dad that's going to show up and take care of her. There's no one bigger than her, more powerful than her, that's going to comfort her. And so she has to work this out because this is a place that's keeping her from the fullness of her power and her strength.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, here's what happens though. When you're in the circumstance, you really believe it's about the circumstance.
It feels very real.
It feels so real. So if you would have told me like, no, this is about the little girl before I had the revelation, if you would have told me that, I would have said, no, I've had chronic sickness for 30 years. I don't have kids because I've been so sick. Yeah. I haven't been able to work a full-time job because I've been so sick. I've had to quit everything in life because I've been so sick. Don't tell me this is about the little girl. This is about being tired of restrictions. This is about being tired of my life being stolen from me. Like I could have defended, no, these circumstances really do suck.
And you would have.
And it's true.
Yeah.
You've watched me be in pain physically.
That's been horrible.
For a long time.
Yeah.
But again, once I recognized, it changed my life. Once I recognized my emotions are about my aloneness that I have felt as a little kid.
Yeah.
My emotions are about my hopelessness that I felt as a little kid. My emotions are about the little girl who was terrified her needs would never get met. Yeah. And so I began to see, it would be like, I'd feel a wave of pain. Mm-hmm. And I would be like, okay, what is this from my childhood? And so then I would all of a sudden connect a dot, like, oh, well, I never could count on having a mom. And so I had felt so self-sufficient. And so I felt really alone, or I felt like I couldn't have needs. I felt like I couldn't have problems because my mom had so many problems and my dad had so many. And so, oh, I've stuffed everything inside. And oh, now this is like, I need to go validate that little girl. Hey, actually, this is really painful. And this would be the year I'd say I ripped denial off, because I finally recognized that this pain I'm in was the pain I had as a kid. And so for the first time in my life, I'm looking at her being like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I told you that didn't matter. I'm sorry that I told you that you should be fine living in this crazy house. I'm sorry that I told you that this stuff shouldn't affect you. I'm sorry that I always told you to shove it down. Like, oh, I actually see you. And I could see the little girl, and I felt like I could see for the first time why she has so many protectors and why she had to learn so many coping skills. And and this is the essence of compassion that will be in the thing that we're talking about. Like, when you can actually see the little kid and why they're doing what they're doing, it was like wave after wave of being unveiled. I know we did the mom series.
Yeah.
And people could hear that raw part of me where I'm like, I actually needed a mom. I never let myself say that I needed any parents. I never let myself say, like, I never validated that bad things happening were sad as a kid.
Yeah.
I just threw positivity over it and figured out how to keep going. And so now here I am, and I'm the sickest I've ever been, and having to grieve my entire childhood.
Kind of a crappy deal.
It's like so intense. It's so intense. So I'm having to be like, oh, I'm having to look at the little girl and be like, I'm really sorry that you didn't get a mom, and I'm really sorry that you didn't get to experience being taken care of. I'm sorry that you learned that you had to take care of everyone else and that you mattered less than everyone else. And so I began to like see me for the first time, and like actually see what was really going on. And then there'd be like a wave of pain. I know like a huge wave of pain that came up would be, we believe in God and we believe that God heals.
Yeah.
And so a huge wave of pain was like, God, do you care? Like, and I was like, very much like, you could heal me through a doctor. You could heal me. Like, it doesn't have to be a miracle. But I was like, why do you not care about me? Like, I've been suffering for so long in my body. I've had to fight so hard to do normal things. Like, I remember during this year I'd look at Instagram and I'd be jealous because somebody's just eating without thinking of 500 things. Can I eat this? Can I eat that? Can I do this? Can I do that? Or I'd watch somebody like they were at Target and I'd be like, I'm jealous that you can just go to Target if you want. So like I can't do that. I go to Target and I feel like I ran a marathon. I feel dead the rest of the day. I can't breathe, and so here I am, and I'm like, God, do you hate me? Like, do you hate me because you're not helping me? And I'm working with you. I'm doing all of the things to take care of my body. And so it was this crazy thing where I will say one thing, that in walking through stuff with God, I
want to input something in a second.
Okay. Do you want to jump in now?
Well, I think that, as you're just sharing what you were, like the questions that you're having with God, they're very clearly the reflection of the kid inside.
Totally.
The kid who's having that question. And that kid, it's not just having the question with God. That little girl's having that question with her dad.
Totally.
and with the authority figures in her life. And that's where it's very easy to get lost in abandonment in feeling abandoned in our spiritual walk. As a side note to some of you out there that believe in God and have had battles in that area, is that you've been having a battle with a version of God that doesn't exist. It's actually a version of your parents. And until you are willing to look at the little kid, you'll be fighting the wrong battle.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I was going to tell my story. Can I finish it?
Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't know if you were done, but I was like, I'm about to tell that part of my story.
Yeah, go ahead. I just wanted to just point that out as they're listening, because I really want people to kind of track, like, oh yeah, that's what that is right there.
Yeah. Well, I know that Paul Young, he's the guy who wrote The Shack. He talks about how pain can get, I can literally see this picture, like there's like, you're standing across from me, a wall of pain could come between us. It doesn't mean that you left me, but I can't see you anymore because all I see is the pain.
Yeah.
And that is definitely what I felt. But so I'm on this journey and I'm processing my emotions and realizing things. And this thing keeps coming up. Why doesn't God love me enough to stop this? Why does it? And I think anyone who's been through suffering, if you've lost somebody, if you've gone through, there's that question of why.
Yeah.
And for me, recognizing it was like one day, all of a sudden I was having a conversation with my friend, and I just blurted out like, oh, my dad hated women when I grew up. Like he hated my mom. He hated anytime I was like my mom. And it just like, came out. And then it was like, I just saw it the whole day. I could see like my mom and my dad were at war. There's a lot of logical reasons. My mom is mentally ill. I didn't know that as a kid. Right. So I can understand how powerless he felt with her and how out of control he felt with her. And then she was running the house. So we were all following her craziness, and and I was like her, and she was raising me. And so then he was scared. Anything that I looked like that looked like her, he was terrified of.
Yeah, wanted to stomp that out.
And he was terrified. And so he reacted really strongly a lot of the times in opposition to her, but she was really loving to me. So opposition to her meant like really strict and punishing. And so there's dynamics. I look at it. I know my dad loves me so much. Yeah. And I have a great relationship with him now. It's really beautiful. We've talked through so many things, but all of a sudden I was like, oh, as a kid, I felt like my dad hated me. Mm-hmm. There was because I was so much like her. I am so much like the good parts of her. Yeah. I was so much like her, and he hated her, and I could feel it. And I knew as a kid that there was nothing that I could do, because I was also on my mom's team growing up. So I couldn't actually, the only way I could have made him happy with me is to divorce my mom's team and be on his team, right. Which wouldn't have been good either. Yeah. Like there was no win. And so like, there's like this deep part. I didn't know this, but as this pain began to come up where I was like, oh, I felt hated. I felt hated for my whole life. Now, I knew he loved me too, but there was like a theme of that. And all of a sudden I remembered like when me and you got married, for the first probably 4 years, I would just randomly be like, do you hate me, Justin?
It was so confusing. Yeah.
You would be annoyed.
I was like,
you were like, what?
And I always felt like it was a question of my failure.
Right, you thought.
I'm like, all I'm doing it, and like I get so overwhelmed. I'm trying to love out. Like, oh, it's not helping. You're angry, but I'm like, I don't understand what the question is.
Totally, and it wouldn't even be when we were in a fight. No, it would just be random.
Totally, and I didn't have any idea of like this has nothing to do with me. There's a question in her soul that she doesn't know how to settle.
Oh, I know. Neither of us knew, and so here I am. And so for the first time this year, I'm like recognizing like, oh, I felt like there's a lot of hatred in my family.
Yeah.
I felt it aimed at me, even though it was never specifically about me. As a kid, you can't tell the difference between, oh, dad just doesn't want you to end up like mom. Like you can't tell that. And so there's so much. So all of a sudden I'm recognizing this pain that sickness brought up.
Yeah.
Which is, do you hate me, God? Why do you not care? Is really this like heart cry inside of me that is about like this girl that felt like she was a failure and unloved. And so then I was able to actually begin grieving out and crying, like, and then I could see that girl and I'm so sorry. It'd be so hard to grow up in a family where you were not seen or believed in, where you felt judged and always felt like you were trying to prove against something. And this is like a crazy year because the emotions from being sick were so strong that then I'm having to look at everything from my childhood that I've never seen before.
Totally.
I literally was like, I'm the most broken person on the planet. I'm so effed up. Yeah. I would just tell my best friend over and over again, I'm so effed up. I'm so effed up. I'm so broken. I'm so broken. And the beautiful thing is I started to own a lot of my coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
So like all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, Justin, I'm so sorry that I've been doing this thing.
I will say that your journey over this last year has been tremendously validating. And I'm not necessarily thankful for the sickness, but I am necessarily thankful for the byproduct of how you've been going after it.
Oh, yeah.
Because I've been feeling insane for 11 years. No, I'm kidding. But as a side note, there's not only has there been revelation for you, but there's been a lot of humility in the way that you've approached it, and I've been deeply grateful for it. Yeah.
Well, and this is what I'm saying. The beauty is suffering can transform you into the best version of you. Pain either softens you and makes you the most loving, authentic, whole version of yourself.
And connection and care, sympathy and empathy.
Or suffering can make you a hard ass, bitter, resentful, judging person.
And there's some of you out there right now that have been going through suffering, and some of you may actually be at a crossroads that you may actually be becoming aware of right now. Like, oh, I'm at a crossroads. I'm either going to become better or bitter, as they say. And there's an invitation here today, even in that. But
and I was thinking somebody wrote in the other day they wrote to me about your book and how much it ministers to them, The Tree of Life. It's so good. But chapter 15, there is a storm. And it's pouring down rain, and some of the trees are losing roots and falling over because of it. But the main character, who's like a God figure, is Morgan. Like, look at me. When the storm is happening, you have the power to grow your roots deeper, faster, because the ground is soft.
Than ever before.
And so they have the choice. They can either, in that moment, take all of their energy to grow down shoot down these strong roots faster than you could years and years and years.
So softened.
Or you can
fall over, lose root, and tip over in the midst of the storm, but you get to choose in that.
Yeah. The storm can be for you if you want it to be.
Yeah.
So I began this journey of, as emotions would come up, I would know. Now, I remember this was probably the most humbling. I'm going to share it because I think it's worth being humble. In the beginning of this journey with my counselor, I accidentally booked a 2-hour session. And so we are doing the session, and she's basically like, I don't think you know emotions. I'm like, I teach emotions. One of my most famous talks is about emotions. Like you don't know me.
You don't know me.
You don't know me.
Shut your pie hole, Jenny.
Totally. And so she makes me write out the emotions that I feel and how I blah, blah, blah. And then she gives me this like gingerbread man looking thing. And she's like, now draw what colors, pick an emotion and draw what it feels like in your body, and swirl if it swirls, and stab if it's like, she's like, draw. I'm like a kid. I'm in play therapy. My mom wrote a book on play therapy when I was a kid. I'm like, you're doing play therapy with me. I have a 2-hour session. We could get somewhere really deep, and you're doing play therapy with me. And I'm like so frustrated. And so I'm doing it. And I'm like, I can't believe this. We're wasting so much money. And that was my money thing. I'm like, and so I get done with it. And when I get done, all of a sudden, I just start sobbing, like sob crying. I'm like, what is this voodoo? How did she do that? How did coloring do that? But all of a sudden I'm feeling this wave of pain because she's saying, I don't know how to feel my emotions. And I'm like, what do you mean? And you've got to understand, I've had a hormone imbalance since I was 12. Yeah. So the last 33 years. So I have periods way more than normal people. I like 80% of my life has been on a period. So I have PMS 80% of my life.
Which the real problem isn't for her, it's for me.
So, but what I'm trying to say is...
So I've been suffering most of her life.
No, totally. But so something that she said was like, I don't think you know how to feel your emotions. Yeah. I think you just feel things when you're PMSing. And because that's so often, nobody can see that you're really disassociated.
Oh, damn.
I mean, I don't actually know that she said it that clearly. Me and her together unfolded it.
Yeah.
But I'm like sobbing because I can recognize, oh my God. Like, so I recognize, I don't actually, if I'm not on my hormones, if my hormones aren't out of control, I don't feel. I only feel because of PMS. And then I don't take my PMS feelings seriously because they're just PMS. Mm-hmm. So then I'm like never feeling real feelings. No, I'm not going to never feeling. That's not true. I have felt much more than lots of people. I've faced a lot of my pain. Yes. I've dug in.
Yes.
But here I am being like, I do go to logic a lot. I can talk about my feelings a lot. And so this year I was like, oh my gosh, I have to. And then all of a sudden when I was doing that, I was like, I should have known. I should have known this. That's what I'm crying about in this 2-hour session with her. I should have known this. I should have known. And she's like, why should you have known? And I can feel that belief that I had my whole life because I should know everything because I should be able to be in charge because I should be able to teach my parents. She's like, you shouldn't have known this. Your parents should have taught you how to feel emotions. And I'm like, no, I should have taught them how to feel emotions and then they could teach me. Like I should have. And this belief system that is so deep about how self-sufficient I should be. And I could feel at the same time that I'm saying, I should have known how to feel my emotions and teach my parents about emotions and what to do. At the same time, I'm feeling this thing inside of me like, I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't know everything. I can't know all of the things about all the things. It's too much. I can't do it. I can't be it. And all of a sudden I could like see this was the dichotomy of my whole existence growing up was I either know everything and I'm self-sufficient and I'm taking care of everyone and having no needs, or I'm completely a mess and have nothing and am sick. And I could instantly see, I was like, oh, my body was the only reason that I ever let myself be less than superhuman as a kid. Yeah. Like as a kid, I have to do everything right. I have to be fully in control. I have to take care of all my mom's needs. I have to take care of my dad's needs. I have to make sure everything's happening in the house. The only time that I gave myself a break was when I was sick. So then all of a sudden I could hear my body and I was like, you've been trying to protect me. Like you've been trying to save me in my life. Like I don't think that necessarily like that I'm sick only because of this. I don't want to say that, but I've been on this journey of reconciling with my body for years, and I've reconciled with how it looks and how it does different things. I had been trying to figure out how to get on the same team about sickness because I felt like, body, you're betraying me. You are betraying me. I want to be living and you're not letting me. So I had felt this tension of like, how are we on the same team? I can't really see it. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, you wanted to set limitations. I didn't live with limitations. I had no limitations. And I knew this before. I knew in the past, like my mom used her body to set boundaries, whatever she didn't want to do. So I'd been working for years on having great boundaries so my body wouldn't have to do that. Yeah. But all of a sudden I'm like, no, it's my internal. It's not the external boundaries with people. It's the internal. I should be able to do all of these things. I should be able to be all of these things. The unrealistic expectations in my mind, that voice only gets silenced with sickness.
Yep. Because now you can justify.
Now I'm allowed.
I shouldn't be able to.
I'm
because
allowed
my body
to have a break.
It needs time out. It needs a nap.
I'm allowed to rest. And so here's what I will say. Very humble pie. It felt like I was eating my own shit learning that.
I remember when you came home.
I was like, oh my gosh. Because feeling like, oh, I'm a part of this. I'm a part of why I've been sick. These belief systems. But then what it led me into is such deep compassion for myself, where I was like, oh my gosh, this little girl had to create so many coping mechanisms because she felt so out of control.
Yeah.
She felt so scared. She felt so alone. She felt like this is so crazy. And as I've uncovered it, realizing, oh, that need for me to be right and in control, like not to be right, but like that need for me to like be on.
Yeah.
Like to be on, to be
strong, capable, available, most powerful person in situations, be able to be strong enough to help other people out. Like I should be able to be in a place where I should be able to do these things and take care of them.
Yeah. So that need is actually just because I felt so unsafe in so many situations and there was so much pain. And so now I can look back and I have like memory start, because I did realize that I was compartmentalized. I didn't feel anything about my childhood. I could talk about it. I talked about it a lot on stage. Yeah. I talked about the things I had to overcome, but I never actually like felt those things and grieved them.
Yeah.
And so I spent a lot of time this year being like, okay, I'm loving this girl. I'm having compassion for this girl. And I'm seeing her for the first time. It felt like just seeing her, like, oh, I get you. People don't know this about me, but it wasn't until this year that I understood why I had torment. Like I always told the story, I had torment and I grew up like this. I literally never saw how they connected. Like I never saw. I didn't know my mom was mentally ill until the last 2 years or so. So it's like my denial freaking killed me.
Through
the roof. And so once I owned that I disassociated, once I began to recognize it, I began to recognize the feeling in my body when it would happen. I began to recognize how often I got out of it, how how often my logic would beat up my emotions.
Yeah.
Now I teach all this. So it's like so humbling because I'm like, I know this and I've actually really have done a lot of work in this area. So I don't feel like it was all in vain, but it was a deep dive this year into even more. Then memories started coming up and I've been able to heal pockets of my heart that I hadn't before because I didn't know they existed.
Yeah.
So I have some other major revelations that I have had along this journey, and we're going to share more about that next time and more about what it's like for you, the lessons you learned in loving me and watching me through this process. But I just want to share. It's very vulnerable. I typically wait till I've been like, it's very vulnerable to share.
Yeah. Till you've been on the other side of stuff.
I've been on the other side.
To kind of share the wrap up of like what you went on. But
yeah, I've been in the middle in a lot of this podcast, but I want to share because, and I don't want, here's the thing. I remember if you've been sick and you listen to somebody else's story who's sick, it's so easy to then go into shame spirals. What am I causing my sickness? What am I doing that it's agreeing with it? Blah, blah, blah. And my story is really hopeful in that none of it caused me shame. All of it caused me to love and have compassion for myself and see myself for the first time.
Yep.
And all of it has actually brought healing. Now, it didn't feel great in the moment. This whole year I've been humbled, just humbled by what I've had to process. but it's such a good journey. So if you're listening and you struggle with things, what I'd love for you to take with health issues or whatever, what I'd like you to take away is that you do have an internal map inside of you. Mm-hmm. That emotions are a huge part. People always tell me to read The Body Keeps the Score, but I'm like, listen, I'm on my own journey. I'm listening to my body and what it's telling me. I'll read the book after I've come up with my own conclusions. But you can read it. And there's a way that we get to partner with learning what our bodies are trying to tell us and what is going on in them, so that we can let go of any blocks that we have emotionally on the healing journey.
It's good. So, hey, thanks for jumping in and joining us today, everybody. I think that if you're being provoked, like, oh, I'm going through the suffering, or I know someone who's really going through the suffering, like Abby said, it's not a time to go tell them, maybe you should change this and maybe this is where it's at, totally. Or beat up on yourself. But it is a time to start reflecting on compassion and how can I have compassion on them? How can I have compassion on myself in this process? What is it that I'm in denial about right now? Because this might actually be provoking part of your life journey where you're going, oh yeah, there's been a whole part of my childhood I haven't looked at. And I'll say this to kind of wrap it up. I had a client one day who was talking about overcoming a certain part of their journey. And practically in the now, they're like, oh, I see what the problem is. I know how to course correct for the now. I don't see any point in revisiting anything prior to that.
Yeah.
And I started to break this down for this client, like, actually, there is a purpose to going back. Mm-hmm. Well, why? Share with me. And they weren't obstinate. They were very clear on what they felt, but they were very open to hear the journey. And this is why, like right now you're hearing in this is why it is valuable to return to your history. Because if I can return to my history, I can actually give what was needed and reconcile the process in the past so that it's not affecting my present. Because that's what's happened for Abby in her relationship with denial. There's places where her denial, like what we choose to deny, we cannot heal.
Yes.
You say again, what we choose to deny, we cannot heal. Mm-hmm. And there are places where she chose to deny the reality of her childhood in such a way that she couldn't get the healing for it, but it was continually affecting her. And so unconsciously, whether it's physically or emotionally or relationally, there's ways of your history acting out in the very present. And you're going, I just feel like a horrible person. I don't know why I do this. Why is rooted back here. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to go back there. You're not going to get abandoned. It's not going to destroy you to look. There's going to be plenty of love and grace to meet you in that historic journey. So all that said, again, you can go to stumvalconsulting.com/ courses / the Compassion Project, and you can check that out. And also rate, review, and subscribe and share with people that you love, that you think this would benefit, or if it's benefited you. Do those things for us. We just want to spread the message of healing and transformation. So to all of you listeners, goodbye.
Goodbye.